Guys, welcome to another episode of the No Fun League. Today we are on to the 2017 NFL First Round Redraft. This is the fourth one that we've done so far. Just do the math quickly in my head. 2017 was the draft class with Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky. It was, I think, one of the best running back classes of all time, as you guys will see. And it was just a very... the entire first round is pretty stacked. It's all players that have made an impact wherever they've been in the NFL. Even if they've been traded and stuff, they've been really good players. So, and that's not always the case. There are times where you're scrambling a little bit towards the end of the first round to find people worthy of, even in the redraft, being a first round selection. It wasn't the case with this draft, so let's get right into it. At 1, the Browns, who I've made so much fun of in this series about how bad they are at drafting and everything like that. They had the number 1 overall pick. They picked Myles Garrett. He is a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He is an absolute beast, but I couldn't have them make that pick, unfortunately. In the redraft, they take Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, 33,000 yards, 260 touchdowns, 71 interceptions. Just a great player, the best quarterback in the NFL right now, maybe the best quarterback in NFL history after his career's over, but he already has 3 Super Bowls and it's been less than a decade. Just a really, really good football player that could have transformed the Cleveland Browns franchise if he was drafted there. At 2, the Bears famously picked Mitch Trubisky. They traded up 1 spot with the Niners because the Niners rope-doped them into a trade a little bit. Unfortunately, the Niners took Solomon Thomas after trading back, so it's not like they let the Bears trade up 1 spot and got a lot of draft capital and made a good pick, but getting a lot of draft capital was very important for them. That led to a lot of other good players coming to the team. But in the redraft, I have them taking Deshaun Watson. Now, I understand the last 4 years or so, Deshaun Watson's career have been a clusterfuck with all of the legal situations, which I won't even get into, but even on the field, has had a hard time staying healthy in Cleveland, has not played well in Cleveland when he has played, and does not look anything like the quarterback that he was the first 3-4 years in the league. There was a point in time where walking off the field last game of the season, J.J. Watt told him, "I'm sorry that we wasted a year of your prime." He was that good. And obviously a massive fall off has ensued. The $230 million guaranteed that he got has, tarnished his reputation even more because it's going to be impossible to live up to that large of a guaranteed deal no matter who you are, unless it's Mahomes or Josh Allen. But so in his career, 17,000 yards, 122 touchdowns, 46 interceptions, and 21 rush touchdowns. Just a really good player when he was, consistently playing with Houston. Then once again, they were up 2 touchdowns on the Chiefs in the divisional round the year that the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl. If they don't blow that lead, we might not have a Chiefs dynasty. So there's a lot of Mandela effects possible. At 3, like I said, the Niners picked Solomon Thomas. He is a really cool dude from what I've seen, has battled through a lot of mental health struggles and things like that, still in the league right now, but he never panned out to be a top 3 overall pick football player. In the redraft, I have them taking Myles Garrett. 88.5 sacks, 94 tackles for loss, 17 forced fumbles. A guy that every offensive coordinator, every offensive line coach has to game plan against. Think about, I'm sure, offensive tackles, and with him lining up everywhere recently in the Jim Schwartz defense, I'm sure the entire offensive line can't sleep well the night before they have to play him. He's that good. And, him on a 49ers team that potentially adds Nick Bosa 2 years later, that would be the most lethal pass rush duo maybe in NFL history. At 4, the Jaguars picked Leonard Fournette, and like I said, the running back class is so good that it was hard. I don't even know if Leonard Fournette went in the first round, and the first 3-4 years of his career he was definitely worthy of doing so. But I have them in the redraft taking Christian McCaffrey. 11,000 total yards, 19 total touchdowns, completely transformed the Niners offense. They have been to the NFC Championship game. If Purdy doesn't get hurt, who knows what happens in that game. Then they went to the Super Bowl the next year. They barely lost with him on the field, and just a complete game changer and a running back worthy of a top 5 selection. At 5, the Titans picked Corey Davis. In this redraft, I have them taking Cooper Kupp. He was a third-round pick. 7,000 yards, 58 touchdowns, Super Bowl MVP, one of the best receiver seasons of all time, if not the best receiver season of all time, and just another really good, reliable receiver, can line up anywhere and win. And, young Marcus Mariota, get him Cooper Kupp as a weapon and see what happens. At 6, the Jets picked Jamal Adams, who, blitz boy and all of that, gets made a lot of fun of. The Seahawks trade, I don't think panned out. They made up for it with the Rush trade a few years later. But in the redraft, I have them taking Budda Baker, 555 tackles, 7 interceptions, 9 sacks. Just a big playmaker. I think his most famous play, unfortunately, is when DK caught him at the 2-yard line on that interception return. But just a really, really good football player. At 7, the Chargers picked Mike Williams. I have them taking Chris Godwin instead. 7,000 yards, 36 touchdowns, a guy that I think was definitely worthy of being the second receiver taken after Kupp, and just a really consistent receiver in the NFL. At 8, the Panthers picked Christian McCaffrey. It's interesting that the Panthers picked a running back in the top 10 with Dave Gettleman as GM. A year later, Dave Gettleman is the GM of the Giants. They pick a running back at 2, and, he just old school football mentality, which never really worked out, honestly, but it is what it is. That's in the past. I have them taking Marshawn Lattimore instead. I think that fits their needs at the time much better, and he's just such a great player that he should have been drafted in the top 10. 17 interceptions, 67 pass breakups, 349 tackles. So, finding a corner that can tackle consistently is really hard, and he's a dog. Him and Mike Evans matching up is insane every year. Just a really good player. At 9, the Bengals picked John Ross. Once again, I have them going in a different position that I think fits their needs more. I think they were just attracted by that speed factor after the combine. I have them taking Jamal Adams. 4 interceptions, 21.5 sacks, 362 tackles. Just a really good, productive box safety. Not the best cover safety in the NFL, but that's okay. He's a versatile weapon on defense, and that is very valuable to teams right now. At 10, the Chiefs picked Patrick Mahomes. They traded up one spot ahead of the Saints, who wanted him, let Drew Brees know that they were going to pick him if he got there. And Patrick Mahomes is obviously, like we said before, when he got picked number 1 overall in the redraft, just the GOAT. I think he's going to end up being the GOAT quarterback in the NFL. But in this redraft, I have them taking TJ Watt, insane player in his own right. Keep going with Alex Smith. He had a MVP caliber season that year. He was really good. And, you just build around him, make that team better. TJ Watt has 96.5 sacks, 107 tackles for loss, and 7 interceptions in his career. So, just, the Watt brothers, just phenomenal. At 11, the Saints picked Marshawn Lattimore. The Saints actually had, I think, one of the best, if not the best, draft in recent history in 2017. Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, a couple of other pieces. Even Taysom Hill, I think, in the later rounds, who Sean Payton loved. But in this, now, since Marshawn Lattimore is already off the board, I have them going with Tre'Davious White. 18 interceptions, 45 pass breakups, 56% of his targets become catches. Just a really good player who unfortunately has dealt with a lot of injuries in his career, but when he's on the field, he's really, really good and really consistent. At 12, the Texans picked Deshaun Watson, and this is going to seem like an out there pick, but I have them taking Mitchell Trubisky. And now you might ask, Jesus, why Trubisky? He was so bad. I think this is a case where the situation that he was drafted into and the spot that he was drafted at did a lot to stunt his career and fuck it up a little bit. But overall, his stats: 13,000 yards, 74 touchdowns, 48 interceptions, 64% completion. And, they were able to take Deshaun Watson and make him a superstar. That coaching staff in Houston, Mitchell Trubisky probably doesn't become a superstar at that level, but I still think that he could become a very good, above average to very good quarterback in the NFL if in the right situation with the right coaches, and not the Chicago situation, which we've seen is horrible for any quarterback that goes into it. Hopefully Caleb Williams fares a little bit better. At 13, the Cardinals picked Hassan Reddick. I have them taking Hassan Reddick again with the caveat that they play him at the right position, which they did not do, which is why when he went to the Panthers, he popped off, went to the Eagles, now he's on the Jets, and he's had a really good season whenever they play him in the right position, which the Cardinals never did. They had him, as an off-ball linebacker, which is not his specialty, but 58 sacks, 69 tackles for loss. A really, really good edge rusher who was never used right in Arizona, which is why he went to a different team and then, really blossomed and became a top 10 edge rusher in the NFL. At 14, speaking of the Eagles, they picked Derek Marnett, another bad first-round draft pick for Howie Roseman. In this redraft, I have them taking Trey Hendrickson. Like I said, the Saints had a phenomenal draft. He was one of their draft picks. 59.5 sacks, 52 tackles for loss. One of the biggest reasons why the Bengals are as good as they are right now is he was one of their big signings, either right before or, after they picked Burrow. Just a really good, consistent edge rusher, which we've mentioned are very hard to find, and this was a very good class to need an edge rusher with Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Hassan Reddick, and Trey Hendrickson going in the top 14. At 15, the Colts picked Malik Hooker. I have them taking Marcus Williams, yet another Saints pick. 21 interceptions, 30 fun pass breakups in Baltimore now. Just another really good, consistent safety when healthy. At 16, the Ravens picked Marlon Humphrey, who I think is a really good player, but I think that Alvin Kamara would have been the better pick for them at that point in time. 10,000 total yards, 81 total touchdowns. Like I said, another Saints draft pick. We've had 4 go already with Lattimore, Hendrickson, Williams, and Kamara, and everybody knows that Alvin Kamara, his rookie season was phenomenal. He won everybody's fantasy leagues for them, and since then he has been a really consistent running back when healthy. With the 17th pick, it was the Washington Commanders football team, whatever else you might want to call it. They picked Jonathan Allen. I have them picking with Jonathan Allen. I think he's a really good lineman. I'm surprised that he's not traded yet, since they traded Young and Sweat last year. I figured they'd trade one edge rusher, one D tackle, and then keep one at each position, but they chose to trade both edge rushers instead. But Jonathan Allen is a really good player, especially for an interior D lineman. 45 sacks, 61 hits. Just a really, really good player, and one of the stalwarts for their defensive line. If they were a slightly competent franchise, that defense would be top 10 every year with the talent that was on it at one time. There were 4 first-round picks on that defensive line with Sweat, Young, Payne, and Jonathan Allen. And, they were never able to, play that much together because of injuries and stuff. The turf at FedEx Field is awful. But just even in spite of that, they weren't really able to ever do that much. Maybe in this alternate universe, they coexist really well together and have success. At 18, the Titans picked Adoree Jackson. I have them taking Aaron Jones instead. They really needed a running back at the time. 6,400 rushing yards, 52 rush touchdowns. They weren't using, they were not using the talent at their disposal. And he would have fit really well. Because Derrick Henry hadn't, at that point in time, he was not playing well. So this would have been an immediate boost. And then if Derrick Henry does end up playing well, you have a Derrick Henry who, not that great in the pass game, but will get you 5 yards a carry just by running over people. And then you have Aaron Jones and a pass game weapon slot receiver type guy because he's that good. And that offense would be even better than it was. Or I'm sorry, that's the Titans. They had 2 picks this draft. They used them on Davis and Adoree Jackson. Both who are pretty good players, but I feel like turning that into Cooper Kupp and Aaron Jones is a little bit better. At 19, the Bucs picked O.J. Howard, who once again had a decent career. I have them taking George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the NFL, probably third after Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, in my opinion. But 6,700 yards, 39 touchdowns. Didn't really play that much in the beginning of his career, but was a baller his rookie year. I remember it was a late round draft pick for one, or a waiver wire pickup for one of my friends, and like he then started going absolutely wild, and it was insane. But just a really good player, really good tight end, and an awesome dude. At 20, the Broncos picked Garrett Bowles. I have them taking Ryan Ramczyk instead. 4,000 snap seasons, 23 sacks allowed. The Saints just drafted an offensive lineman because, now injuries are starting to catch up to him. But for as long as he was playing there and he was healthy, he was such a great player for them. At 21, the Lions picked Jared Davis. I have them taking Matt Milano, just a much better overall player at the linebacker position. 417 tackles, 10 interceptions, 58 tackles for loss. Him and Tremaine Edmonds were a phenomenal duo for Buffalo at the linebacker spot for the 5-6 years that they played together. At 22, the Dolphins picked Charles Harris. And in these redrafts, there's always like one guy where I'm like, who I don't remember whatsoever. Charles Harris was that guy in this draft. I have them taking Evan Engram instead. They needed a tight end at the time. Evan Engram, 4,600 yards, 25 touchdowns. As a Giants fan, he will always be a really frustrating player to me because the talent was always evident. He would get open, and then he would just drop the easiest passes, and it was so frustrating. But still, after leaving the Giants, going to Jacksonville on that 1-year deal, then getting the franchise tag and a new contract, he's been a really, really good player for them, arguably their second or third most important weapon, one depending on how you rank him in ETN, but a really good player. At 23, the Giants picked Evan Engram. I have them taking Eddie Jackson Jr. instead. 15 interceptions, 28 pass breakups, 393 tackles at the safety position. We had a bunch of no-names in the secondary at that point in time, and this would have resulted in a safety duo of Landon Collins and Eddie Jackson, which would have been hilariously good. At 24, the Raiders picked Garyon Conley. I have them taking Dalvin Tomlinson instead. He was a Giants pick in the second round, I believe. 155 tackles, 30 tackles for loss, and 16 sacks as an interior defensive lineman. He's played for the Vikings and the Browns. I think those are the two teams that he's played for since leaving New York, and he's been a really valuable presence for those two teams as well. At 25, the Browns picked Jabril Peppers. I have them taking David Njoku, who they picked at 29 in real life. They had 3 first-round picks this year. 3,400 yards, 25 touchdowns. Another really good tight end, a really underrated tight end. At 26, the Falcons picked Takk McKinley. I have them taking Deion Dawkins, Temple legend, shout out. 6,000 snap seasons, 32 sacks allowed. So he plays consistently, but he also lets up sacks at a higher rate than other players, which is why he didn't go as high as Ramczyk, but still a really good, consistent left tackle. At 27, the Bills picked Tre'Davious White. I have them taking Jabril Peppers instead. 343 tackles, 6 interceptions, 8 sacks. Again, not a guy that you want, in single coverage against Travis Kelce, but a really valuable box safety. At 28, the Cowboys picked Taco Charlton. Really rare Cowboys bust in the first round, but I have them taking Juju Smith-Schuster. Once again, this might be met with what? Why Juju? His reputation kind of precedes him in a negative fashion at this point in his career. But 5,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, won a Super Bowl in Kansas City. A really consistent player, and he would be the wide receiver too after Dez Bryant and give them a little more oomph on offense. At 29, the Browns picked David Njoku. I have them taking Austin Eckler. Like I said, this was a hilariously good running back class. Eckler has 3,900 receiving yards, 30 receiving touchdowns, 4,000 rushing yards, 41 rushing touchdowns, just signed with the Commanders, and a really, really good running back, a really underrated running back, especially in terms of touchdown production, and just a really good player nonetheless. At 29, for the Browns. At 30, the Steelers picked TJ Watt. I have them taking Carl Lawson. 27 sacks, 28 tackles for loss, 107 QB hits. A really underrated edge rusher, and would add to that Pittsburgh defensive line in a massive way. At 31, the 49ers picked Reuben Foster out of Alabama. I think this is a really talented player, but there was a lot of off-field issues and stuff like that plagued his career. The 49ers had 2 picks in this draft. Originally at 2 and 31, they picked Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster, so they could have done a lot better. In this redraft, they end up with Myles Garrett, and I have them taking Kenny Golladay. Once again, as a Giants fan, I hate Kenny Golladay. I hate the idea of him, not him as a person. I'm sure he's a decent human being. Don't know him enough to hate him, but I hate that contract. I was excited for it, and it failed miserably, and it was disgusting. But 3,600 yards, 22 touchdowns, only a 6% drop rate. Like, when he played, when he was healthy, he was really good. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in New York, but with Stafford in Detroit, he was a great player. And at 32, the Saints picked Ryan Ramczyk. I have them taking Taylor Moton instead. 6,000 snap seasons, 15 sacks allowed, 29 penalties. Because of the penalties, I had him going after Deion Dawkins. But once again, a really underrated tackle and a really good player. And just in, the Saints had Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Hendrickson, Marcus Williams, Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk go in this redraft. They had 5 players that they picked in this draft go in the first round. If we look back at their career and the impact that they've had in the NFL. So, and there were other players that, missed out or still gave them value that they drafted later. Like I said, Taysom Hill, case in point. So, 2017 set up the Saints for a bit of a rebuild, a very quick rebuild. They were middling, going 9-7 every year, and this draft class allowed them to go and become a perennial NFC South champion and a playoff contender. And I think this team could have won a Super Bowl if not for that no call in the NFC Championship game against the Rams, which was blatant. And let's not talk about NFL officiating too much. That's an entirely different episode, entirely different conversation that might take 5 hours if we ever actually get into it. But yeah, thank you guys for watching the 2017 redraft. Let me know what you guys think. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.